Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, helping higher education marketing leaders share knowledge about learning, strategies, and tactics that are relevant today. See what you can learn today by listening to one of our episodes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast hosted by Concept 3D. Concept 3D has served the higher education community for over a decade with our award-winning interactive maps and virtual tours. Improve your campus communications, engagement, and recruitment with our powerful location-based virtual solutions. So my name is Shiro, and I will be your host today. I'm a demand gen marketer at Concept 3D, and today I'm speaking from my home in Silverthorne, Colorado, which is sort of a neighboring city of Denver, right? About an hour and 15 minutes west in the mountains. And today I am super excited to have Garrett Spradlin join us today. Garrett has years of experience in recruitment and admissions, working his way up to assistant director of admissions most recently. Garrett, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
That's great. And where are you joining us today? And do you want to tell us one fun fact?
Okay. I'm about 45 minutes south of Denver, actually. So I am also in Colorado in Castle Rock.
Nice.
Fun fact. Fun fact about me. I love photography. So I do a ton of creative stuff in that realm. I've shot for a bunch of the nightclubs in Denver. So a ton of photography stuff. I think that's my fun fact.
That's amazing. I used to be into it a few years ago. What body do you use, or what company do you stay true with?
I definitely use my Nikon.
Nice.
So I'm pretty true to that. Although I believe if you have the eye, you can use any camera. So
that's great. That's awesome. Got it. Thank you. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about, your experience with higher ed and your passion with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I'm one of those that I think a lot of us can relate to, that I say higher ed chose me. I didn't choose it. I think we all kind of pursue the industry in different ways, but it grabs you somehow. But really started in my undergraduate career just as a tour guide. So I was a student ambassador starting my sophomore year, clear on up, worked into kind of the event coordinator position. So I was doing a lot of our large recruitment events, and then stayed with it through grad school into student housing. I worked both private and public student housing, and privatized, I mean, owned individually, right? Owned more like a leasing and targeting students, to where I've also worked on campus housing, where it's actually within the university. So definitely campuses that have had student housing and some that don't. So
that's great. And I know you have a lot of experience with on-site visits, visitor center teams or tour guides. I'm not sure the right word for this, but how is it so important to get students on campus, and what do you have to do to get them there in the first place?
Yeah, I think I found my passion with visitor services as a tour guide. I think when you work that front line and you're out there recruiting and you're filling in for admissions counselors and you're out on the road, I definitely felt that connection to students, really that confusion. I myself am a first generation student, so I was the first in my family to go to college. So I think that natural confusion that comes with it, so having just that lens on it too, allows you to present admissions in just a very streamlined way, right? For most students, it's a very overwhelming process. I always say it's like health insurance. It's like we avoid going to the hospital because we don't know how to do it. So it's the same for college. I think students avoid it because there's so many steps and they don't know how to do it. So we break that down quite a bit, to take one step at a time. Like, you have to apply, then we start the FAFSA, and then how do we take that step by step, and really break that down for a student to not get overwhelmed and not divert from the student experience. That way, I think there's a lot that can get in the way of a student actually yielding through the recruitment process.
Right.
And I think retention plays a big role in that, even for the 4, 5, 6, now longer years after that, right? Because there's no pattern anymore. There's not necessarily a 4-year plan for most students. So,
right. That's great. And were there things that you've experienced, any tips on like getting, potential students onto the
onto the campus to start out with?
Yeah, I always say visitor services is kind of like a first date, right? Imagine if there was just like a Tinder of universities and students are either swiping left or swiping right.
Yeah.
But all the things that they're looking for is the same, right? Looks, money, how much does it cost? And seeing if they can have a relationship with that institution for the next 4 years before they break up, right? So, and you hope that when you get to the university for a campus visit, that it looks like the pictures that we show, right? So same thing as that first date experience, I think, for so many right now, that everything's going virtual. So it allows people to step into campus, really see if they're a fit, and see if they belong there, right? There's a fit piece that I think so many of us talk about, works for them and for us to see if that student, right? They're not only applying to get in, we're also seeing which students we want to let in. So it's kind of one of those, we're interviewing both ways to see if they're going to be a successful student. But the campus experience, I mean, I would argue that the campus visit is the most important in most students' decision process. I think that they get to see what they want to see. And I think most campus tours, right, there's a lot of info jam-packed in there, but we're only really hoping that the student can grab onto the ones that hopefully hit them specifically to them. So we have to tell it all to hope that they get 1, 2, 3 pieces that they can take with them, right? We talk about athletics, maybe that's not for your whole tour group, that's for that one individual.
Right.
So you really have to kind of be broad, so that every student sees and hears what they need to see and hear to make their decision.
Got it. I know you mentioned right now just a little bit about your campus tours and your team that you've created in the past. You taught me a lot about how it's very difficult to build this team, and I thought that was a really unique perspective. Do you want to touch on some points around, like, how to create a stellar visitor center team from your experience?
Yeah, I think so. For me, I have to really, sometimes we have to take a step back, right? Because all of us go into these roles and it's our everyday, it's our life, it's our everything, right? And most of us think really long term in the industry. We're there quite a few years, or at least in the industry for quite a few years. I've been very fortunate enough to work in higher ed and out of higher ed. So to see team dynamic in that sense too. But with my student staff, I think I really had to realize that for them, they knew this was a temporary situation. So how do you get them invested in a temporary situation and really let them get more out of the experience than just what they're getting in the classroom, right? So they're going into a student position knowing there's flexibility, but also what else can I learn, right? It's kind of the other half of that yin and yang piece for most students, because they have their classroom experience and they have their work experience, and that's when that real world comes in. And so many of them do internships and things that we push now, kind of that college to career transition. So it's how do we build that within their student employment piece? And student employment has shown to be a huge retention piece just as a university as a whole. For my student staff, it was really about how do we lessen that turnover so that I'm not training a brand new staff every 4 months, 5 months.
Right.
And how do we have enough students that want to work there and get applications in and really market it? So my team went from a team of 3 to at any given point upwards of like 30 to 35. And most of them stayed with me, clear up until they graduated. Some of them did get internships and things that we have to let them go do. I hate letting them go. I always want to just keep them on staff forever.
Yeah.
But then allowing them to have experience and grow within the program. So for me, it was about starting as a tour guide. And then I had a leadership team. So I had 5 core positions. That could be events, that could be marketing and social media. And those were positions that they could apply for again after their first year. And then there was a third tier of being the intern. So they're even higher than their peers. There's pay raises with all of those. There were more hours guaranteed with all of those and more responsibility. So it allowed my students to really move up the whole time, never feel like they're in the same position. They're gaining a lot more. And I think they invest in it. I think that it allows them to feel like they're a part of something bigger. And really they are. I think the recruitment piece relies on those
Yeah.
things. You know, when you're meeting someone that actually goes there, that may be your major or that sits in the classroom, you know, that came straight from a class, it's such a great experience for them to hear about. And I wanted them to know, they were important, but I wanted the university to also recognize them as something that is important. So
Right.
I put them, you know, I always say at concerts and stuff that we see people in staff shirts and different things. And that's how you know who to look for, you know, when you're at an event. So my students, our colors, one of them was blue. So I put them all in blue apparel, and it said the crew in blue, and on the back it said crew. So they knew they were part of the crew. We created Club Blue, which is a little office space that they were able to have a locker and put their stuff down and hang out in and do homework and use a computer. And I found most of my students would then hang out even when they weren't on the clock, right? I had more students that were actually staying around, sticking, and we're a commuter campus. So that was the best part, right? Because if I needed someone to cover or be there or an extra person, it's a lot harder on a commuter campus to get someone to drive in for a 1-hour shift. So a lot of times it's great to provide a space that I knew, hey, you guys are all doing homework. Do any of you want a couple
That's
extra
amazing.
time? Yeah. And it was cool to see them bond, right? They did different things. And I think we provided a lot of team bonding time, whether that was during our trainings or just fun social activities.
Right. That's
So
amazing. So what I'm hearing is you were effectively able to create a culture and a community within that team where people were, you know, they enjoyed being there as opposed to like having it just be like, oh, that's just my campus job or something, like something they would put off like that. Right.
right. Treating it more like a student group. And I think it allowed them to, when they're out on tour and they're in a blue shirt, faculty and staff started to recognize like, oh, that's a tour. You know, you suddenly recognize you're on a campus visit. So more faculty were saying hi to our visitors. You know, you'd get a little, hey, do you guys want to come in the theater? We saw you passing, you know, and they'd open up the theater doors and things that weren't necessarily on every tour, just because they could see us coming. You know, we had our president, our president of campus, she would kind of jump in on some of those tours, and they'd get back and they're like, oh, president was on our tour, you know, and to them that's so exciting, right? Because that's someone who's in charge and higher up. And it was great because the community knew them and they knew they were impacting the university community too. So it was a back and forth that I love to see. And they believe I don't even want to say they want to believe that they're part of something bigger, because to me they were. So it was how to get them to see they were a part of something bigger. How does their puzzle piece fit in the whole puzzle, and getting people to buy into that.
I could see like the institution, you know, like what you said about how getting the buy-in from the institution, like that is so big because I mean, just having that, I'm sure helps prevent turnover, helps keep your staff. So it's just a win-win on both sides. And it's really interesting to hear that like these things that are helpful for the actual team are also helpful for the school, and it kind of brings both sides up.
Yeah. And I think for me, right, and I would say most visitor people in the industry provide a tour manual and rules, and most jobs, I would say, do in general. I gave them a huge tour manual, but really at the front of that book, so when they signed up and it was their first day and they get this big manual that's, you know, spiral bound, page 1 had one rule, and it just said, support our guests, support each other. That's it. That was the only rule I want you to take away from the whole book. Support our guests, support each other. And then I knew my job was to support them. That's my role, right? So I think that support factor, and I took that from a VP of a chain of casinos and hotels, and I heard him speak. And it's so brilliant because that's all you need to know, right? They would support each other, trade shifts, pick up shifts, support our guests, right? That's the immediate. And I support you. So it's how do I hold up my end of the bargain too? Because then they become more responsive too. As you know, as a leader, as a manager, as a mentor, I think we're in this role for student employment, and you have to hold up your end of the bargain for them to hold up their end of the bargain. A lot of times we place it on them, and it's like, well, I think we both have to do our jobs.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Was there anything that was like very difficult when you first started out? I know you said you had three people on your team, right? And then that 10x. Like
Yeah,
what was the start like?
I think growing pains for sure. I think the ability to offer more visits, so then those had to be developed. But then I think keeping up with the demand, right? Because we were getting requests, and we were months behind at that point when I first took it over, of group visits, and high schools that were wanting to bring larger groups. Elementary schools are bringing groups now. There's so many people that want to visit campuses, and I think more people are seeing the effectiveness, and the responsibility that we have to even show students college campuses even at a younger age, which is why you see more middle schools doing this and things.
Right. Uh-huh.
So keeping up with that demand with a really small staff is really hard. I remember times when we were grabbing like admissions counselors, and we were all giving tours, including myself, right? It was like, if tour guide can show up, it was me. I was ready to walk backwards. And I feel like some of the same tour guide jokes that I had probably in my undergrad, I still used in my professional tour career.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
I love that.
I would always tell our guests that we would practice on the backwards treadmills at the rec center because we'd walk backwards, and they're always like, really? And like, no, we don't do it.
Got it. I get it. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I know we're talking about, getting students on campus, getting applications in, and it's summer now. And so I think, melt's a hot topic.
Yeah.
Pun intended, a hot topic. But what do you do after the visit, right? How do you keep your students engaged so that they come back in the fall or in January to actually attend?
Yeah. So for me, mine was kind of a dual role. And I actually am really thankful for that, because I think sometimes the bridge between that front end recruitment piece, and then there's this marketing piece, and then there's this retention piece, right? So there's kind of these three siloed areas. And for me, I was glad that my realm was kind of this visitor piece with marketing. And it allowed me to make sure that those pieces were still being grasped. So the things that we talk about in our tour presentation were being, echoed even in our communications, right? In an email or a text, in our event days. So all of that fell within my realm, which was nice to see that we had this piece, and it allowed, I think in communications, we've gotten away from its capacity and time, right? So we're sending out a lot of mass communications. So the personalization isn't there. And I think we have to remember that you really are talking to a real human on the other side. And most of us real humans don't have time to read, a really long newsletter or those type of things, which studies have shown. But if you think about it just yourself intrinsically, like, yeah, I don't read the Comcast full newsletter, right? It's just what we do. So I think shortening up those communications and then personalizing them, right? Any way that we can throw your name in there, or maybe it looks like it's coming from your admissions counselor and you're replying straight to them, right? So I think when it's a more personal experience, regardless of the size of your campus, seeing higher open rates, higher response rates. We really trained our students. We kind of did we did keywords at the top of our email campaigns. And I really, really pushed that in the sense, because I think students get a long email and then they still have what do you want me to do? Like, what do I need to do out of this? So we just did quick topics, right? Quick fix, submit your transcripts. It's after the semester's over. And they knew in that top box, oh, I have to do something. And yeah, there's all the instructions and where to send it and all the details that we have to have. But at least right there, it says, this is what I want you to do. Quick info, quick story. Maybe it's just a story that's about your major. You don't have to read it. We always told them, like, hey, those ones, they're going to be relevant to you, not required. If you want to just click delete, we get it. You have a lot of stuff coming in. So it allowed us to train students how to work with communications, just like we're training them on everything else that they have to do for the college experience, right? Just like we'd show you how to do your FAFSA. So why are we showing them how to do communications that we're sending? So same idea. And then really getting them excited. I think that we forget a student has just been accepted to a university. Like, this is the next chapter of their life. So really developing our acceptance packets and larger banners that they could say, hey, I'm headed to here. wanted to simplify that acceptance packet at the same time, right? So instead of a bunch of papers from a bunch of offices and here's what you do next. And I think that's a very overwhelming feeling instead of feeling excited. How do we
Right.
not overwhelm them and keep them excited? That's a hard fine line to balance. So we developed smaller business cards that actually popped into our acceptance folder. And each of those was just, financial aid. And then on the back had a little bit of info and their link. The next one was like, did you register for orientation? And it had the orientation info and their link. So it was like, I could almost just stick that orientation one in my wallet and know, oh, I got to register for orientation. Like, I'll keep that on my radar instead of having so much to overwhelm the student. And then we kept the rest about excitement, right? Free game tickets to the next, if they want to go to a game before they even attend, or those types of things. So keeping the excitement alive, I think we can't forget that we want to give them all this info, and that can ruin the moment.
Got it. You could turn people away even, instead, but really reaching them and engaging them is the way you keep the retention and decrease that melt. Yeah,
it's so exciting, right? And so many of us have moved to all online or all virtual type stuff, right? You can do almost anything without an actual form anymore. You can do it all online. So why not get them something that's physical, but also then provide all those things that allow them just to keep moving. What's the next steps?
That's amazing. I love that bit.
Yeah,
it's awesome. Well, fun. Keep going. Sorry.
No. I just think about it and I think like how often that we lose the excitement because we're going through the motions. And so I'm like, this is someone's acceptance into the next chapter of their life. Like it's so essential to them. So
yeah,
when I write something, I'm like, everything you learned in elementary school about voice and all these traits of writing, it still applies even in our realm. Like you should look like I wrote you something and you're a real person and these types of things.
I really like what you said earlier about the on-site visit is like a daunting experience. Like I remember I was thinking back to my first college on-campus visit, and it was like the first time doing it, and it was quite the experience because it was my first time, and I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know what to think was cool. Like I didn't know like what I should be listening to. And I did I was fortunate enough to do more on-site visits at other campuses, but I remember that being difficult. And I think that's why I didn't choose that school. Like I picked like number 2 or 3, because like I learned what to look for. So like having that really good tour guide, like, explain things in a very good way.
There was
helps you understand what to look for.
Yeah, there was one study a few years ago, and it said the average student visits 7 different universities before making a decision. And I would almost guess, COVID probably impacted that a little, but I would say students visit even more, whether that's through a virtual tour online too. It's so much easier to tour a campus now, right? I can click through and visit Harvard and visit all these other Ivy League schools. So sometimes you're looking and not comparing apples to apples and those types of things, but you can visit a lot of schools in person and virtually now really easily.
And for those who are listening and might not know, Concept 3D does have a virtual campus tour solution. Yeah. And I think we have one of the best. We call it our 360 tour. And I think it's the best. Selfishly, I think it's the best higher ed campus tour out there. So
I think the 3D virtual tours are so convenient for a student because it allows them to specifically see the areas they want to see, to where an in-person one, right, you have to go through the whole, let's say 60 to 90 minute experience.
Right.
Where I can click specifically on the nursing building, on a 3D tour. So
right.
It's definitely something that allows students to really hone in on what they're looking for.
Yeah. And one interesting, I talked to a lot of our customers as well, and they're using it as a tactic, as a content piece in their summer melt outreach. So they'll send like a tour of their dorm or their campus, be like, this is what life will look like. So the student can really imagine themselves on campus, POV style, what it would be like. And that extra touch point can mean, the difference of showing up on the start of move-in weekend or not. So it's really interesting to see the ways it's being used from different schools.
Yeah. And I think honestly, for most of us too, I think it really draws attention that no matter what your background is, students that can or can't afford to visit campuses suddenly can. So now we're building an equity bridge of allowing any student to really see campuses nationwide, international, those types of things. And so I think it's essential. I think it's something that, right, like not every student can fly to 7 different campuses. So it allows you
Right.
to have an equal chance at seeing the schools you want to see, no matter what your economic background, no matter what your income level or your family status, those types of things. So we're really laying the groundwork of that equity and inclusion piece even before a student has started at the university. So
Yeah, that's an amazing point. I think my last call actually, I think his name was Ethan. He's a consultant in recruitment marketing, and he mentioned his company actually did a study on different backgrounds, and he found a majority of students aren't, like you said, aren't able to do more than 1 or 2 on-site visits, but
right.
the virtual solutions and virtual engagements and virtual events have helped students of lower income class like attend an event to figure and learn out more about a school before they, even go on a visit, and it helps them be more selective about where they want to go and opens those opportunities.
Yeah.
And a lot of those events also have information about scholarships, right, and FAFSA, like you were talking about, and so they're able to learn in an engaging environment that's actually easier to digest than just having to read a huge document, which is daunting, like you said. So
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of good things about virtual engagement, not just virtual tours, but like virtual events are huge. And so, yeah, I'm a big believer in it as well.
Yeah. I mean,
We're doing this right now. This is a virtual event.
I think COVID forced so many campuses to catch up to the virtual world,
Right.
because we had to. But honestly, we should have been doing it prior. So it's nice to see so many jump on board, and I think we're all seeing, the results of that. Is that, oh, we should probably still continue these virtual things, even with some sense of normalcy coming back. But
Right, virtual is here to stay.
it is.
Well, Garrett, I think we're about at time. I was wondering if you had a platform where our listeners could connect with you.
Yeah. Instagram is just at Garrett Spradlin, GarrettSpradlin, or my LinkedIn, same spelling. So yeah, any social media platform, connect with me. Feel free to ask me questions. Yeah, I am not in higher ed currently. I'm actually working corporate marketing. So like I said, it's nice to kind of have a dual visual of marketing outside of higher ed, some of the recruitment retention pieces inside higher ed, and how those kind of collide. So it probably still tugs at my heartstrings. So I think I'll probably end up in higher ed sometime when I grow up. It's my forever, I think, but sometimes you get these opportunities outside.
Yep. No, it's good to definitely dip your toes in new waters, just the same marketing waters, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's
Cool.
true. I still keep a pulse on everything. I don't know, when you love it, you love it. It's definitely a fun environment. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it was great having you on today. Thank you for all your insight. Great conversation. And thanks for all listeners for joining.
Thanks for
Have a
having
good
me.
day.
Appreciate it.